And today we're going to talk about integral transformative justice. This is a model that we've been developing for at least the last 20 years at Prison Dharma Network and really evolving over time as an alternative to the current retributive justice model that dominates criminal justice and corrections in our country and the world for that matter. Many of you have probably heard of restorative justice, which is also a wonderful alternative. And restorative justice is a healing model rather than a retributive model. Rather than a punishment model, it's a healing model. And it's really about healing the tear in the community fabric when there's been a crime or a tragedy or some kind of harm done. The way restorative justice works often is as sometimes it's an alternative to the usual court system, especially in smaller level crimes or social problems. Sometimes it can be part of or move along with the regular court system, the regular criminal justice system. Sometimes it involves victim-offender reconciliation programs, and many people associate it with that. But that's really just one aspect of restorative justice and is not always part of it. Really the core of restorative justice is usually that you have community volunteers who form restorative justice circles or panels. And they sort of stand in for the needs of the community, the needs of victims, people who've been harmed, and invite the person or the people who have caused harm into a dialogue. And they're really asking, what they're asking for from this person who's caused harm is a recognition that they've caused that harm, a move into accountability, certainly really trying to encourage and call forth empathy for the people who've been victimized, and often then entering into a contract that gives the community some sense that this person has recognized the harm, recognized the impact of their behaviors, that they're willing to provide restitution where that's appropriate, and that they're willing to enter into some kind of sort of behavioral training or treatment or whatever is called for depending on their issues, so that they move into a healthier lifestyle and they won't continue to cause harm in this way. That's really the core of the restorative justice model. So our model is called integral transformative justice. So it includes the restorative justice model. It also includes the transformative justice model. And they're a little different. The transformative justice model includes, which is actually better known in Australia and New Zealand than here in the US. The transformative justice model includes the whole restorative justice model. It is restorative justice model, restorative justice, but it takes it a step further. Restorative justice is basically, repairing that relationship, inviting the so-called offenders or wrongdoers into accountability, and trying to provide healing for the so-called victims or the people who have been harmed. This is great. This is obviously a much better alternative to the punishment model, which really doesn't meet the needs of those who have been harmed, doesn't meet the needs of victims, and it doesn't really do anything but make so-called offenders worse through punishing them and demonizing them. And our normal retributive justice system actually, in my opinion, and the opinion of many people, actually mainly causes all kinds of collateral damage in our society and actually makes people worse and really doesn't meet anyone's needs. And ultimately, there could be arguments about how much public safety it actually creates. So the restorative justice model, in our view, is a wonderful alternative to this, to move into this healing. But it's really just dealing with the current wave of harmful behavior or wrongdoing or crime. It's not really looking into the roots of that. So transformative justice goes a step further. Transformative justice not only sees a crime or a wrongdoing as an opportunity for healing or a need for healing, but it sees it as an opportunity for transformation. Transformation for everyone involved. Transformation for the victims, for their family, their community. Transformation for the wrongdoer or the offender, and for their family and their community. And transformation for society altogether. Because when things happen, when crimes happen, when harmful behaviors happen. This is really, in some ways, on a systemic level, this is the world speaking to us, saying, hey, there's something to pay attention to here. The system is breaking down. The community is breaking down. These things don't just happen out of nowhere. This is really, the world is saying, wake up, pay more attention here. And so transformative justice wants to look into the behavior and see how did it arise, both in terms of the person who's doing the wrongful or the harmful behavior, like what's happening in their background. What kind of pain and suffering are they acting out of? People don't do harm out of a place of their own joy and life fulfillment. People do harm out of their own place of suffering, pain, and confusion. And when we're trying to invite them into an empathic place with those who their behavior have impacted, they may not have that capability. In fact, in most cases they don't, because no one's ever listened to their pain. No one's ever heard about their suffering. They've never received the empathy. So they don't really have that capacity for the empathy. And what we may be inviting them to do is to say the right things, go through the paces, to try to enter into something that for them may work out better than the normal criminal justice system. Now, in some cases it may work, and restorative justice does work well in many cases. But it has its limitations. Because if we really want to reduce crime and reduce harmful behavior, we have to be willing to look at how does it arise. First, in the individual themselves. So are we willing to bring healing to this individual so that they have a greater capacity for empathy and a lower capacity for doing harmful behavior? Because when we do harm, it means that we are disconnected from those we're harming. We have depersonalized them, or we're completely unaware of them. Somehow we've turned them into objects. We're not in an empathic space. When we have empathy, we can't do harm doing. So bringing healing to the so-called offender, and then secondly, looking systemically at what's going on socially, what's going on in their communities, what's going on in their socioeconomic strata that they live in and operate in. What's happening systemically. If we're not willing to address the systemic causes and conditions, we can't really expect things to change. So yes, absolutely, the needs of the victims and the community are paramount, no question, and the need for that healing. At the same time, if we really want to reduce crime, if we really want a safer world, a healthier world, healthier communities, then we have to be willing to look into the causes and conditions out of which crime and harmful behavior arises in the first place, both at the individual level and at the social systemic level. And this doesn't mean that, as some people I think are afraid sometimes, that if we look at systemic causes and conditions, we're going to let this person off the hook. We're going to say, well, it's your horrible upbringing. And no, absolutely, any individual who's going to change has to step into a space of accountability and recognize the impact their behaviors are having on others and own the consequences they're receiving. That's the only way they're ever going to change. And at the same time, we have to recognize that so many people in our world who are doing harmful behavior come out of backgrounds and upbringings that are just horrendous. I mean, I go out and work with juveniles at a maximum security prison, juvenile prison. And when I hear the stories of these young men and really get the full flavor and insight into the worlds they're living in and growing up in, I mean, it's amazing they haven't done worse things. It really is. They grow up in just horrendous circumstances. So unless we're willing to do something about that, we can't really expect things to change very much. So transformative justice integrates this need for personal accountability and also our need to bring healing to everyone involved and to look deeply into causes and conditions at the individual and the systemic level to bring transformation for everyone involved. And personally, I believe inviting the communities that have been negatively impacted, individuals, their families, their community, into this kind of process is more transformative for them as well.